Have you ever felt like history is a neat, tidy timeline? First came the dinosaurs, then the cavemen, then the Egyptians, then the Romans, and so on. Well, get ready to have your mind completely blown. The timeline of our world is far messier, more bizarre, and more interconnected than you could ever imagine. Today, we're diving into 20 history facts so utterly strange, you'll swear they have to be fake. But I assure you, every single one is true. Let's start with a collision of epic proportions. Picture the Great Pyramid of Giza, a monumental wonder of the ancient world, rising from the Egyptian sands. Now picture a woolly mammoth, that shaggy giant of the Ice Age. You'd think they were separated by an impassable gulf of time, right? Wrong. When the Egyptians were meticulously placing those massive stones to build the Great Pyramid around 2580 BC, a small, isolated population of woolly mammoths was still very much alive, roaming Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean. They wouldn't go extinct for another 1,000 years. It's a mind-bending image, pharaohs and pyramids in one part of the world, and living, breathing mammoths in another. The ancient world was far wilder than we thought. Speaking of ancient Egypt, let's talk about its most famous queen, Cleopatra. We see her as the epitome of the ancient world: pyramids, papyrus, and Roman legions. But here's a fact that completely shatters that perception. Cleopatra lived closer in time to the invention of the first iPhone than she did to the construction of the Great Pyramid. The pyramid was already over 2,500 years old by the time she was born. To her, it was an ancient relic from a distant, almost mythical past. But the time between her reign and the moment Steve Jobs unveiled the first iPhone is less than 2,100 years. So in the grand sweep of history, Cleopatra is practically our contemporary. Now let's jump from ancient Egypt to feudal Japan. Think of the samurai, honorable warriors with their katana blades, living by the code of Bushido. Their era feels like it belongs to a distant pre-industrial past. But the age of the samurai ended much later than you might think. The last major samurai battle, the Satsuma Rebellion, was fought in 1877. That same year, across the world, Alexander Graham Bell was granted the patent for the telephone. Imagine that split screen. In one frame, a samurai in full armor charges into his final battle. In the other, a man in Victorian attire speaks into a strange device, his voice traveling through a wire for the first time. Two worlds, old and new, colliding in the very same year. Let's talk about education. Oxford University is a name synonymous with tradition, history, and academic excellence. It feels like it's been around forever, and in a way, it has. Teaching was already happening at Oxford as early as 1096. Now consider the Aztec Empire, the mighty civilization of Mesoamerica with its grand city of Tenochtitlan. The Aztec Empire wasn't founded until 1325. That means Oxford University is over 200 years older than the entire Aztec civilization. While scholars were debating philosophy in candlelit halls in England, the civilization that would build stunning pyramids in the middle of a lake hadn't even begun. From ancient learning to modern engineering, let's look at the Eiffel Tower. It's the symbol of Paris, a rigid structure of iron lattice. But it's not as rigid as it looks. Thanks to a phenomenon called thermal expansion, the Eiffel Tower actually grows in the summer heat. The iron expands when it gets hot, causing the tower to stretch upwards by as much as 15 centimeters or about 6 inches. Then, as it cools down in the winter, it shrinks back to its normal height. So the iconic landmark you see on a hot August day is literally taller than the one you'd see in the middle of January. Now for a fact that's both grim and startlingly modern. The guillotine is the infamous symbol of the French Revolution's reign of terror. We associate it with Robespierre, Marie Antoinette, and the 18th century. But its use didn't end there. Not by a long shot. France continued to use the guillotine as its standard method of execution until 1977. Let that sink in. The very same year that audiences were flocking to theaters to watch Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader battle with lightsabers in the first Star Wars movie, France carried out its last execution by guillotine. It's a shocking overlap of the archaic and the hypermodern. Think modern convenience is, well, modern? The ancient Romans would like a word. While they may not have had smartphones, they did have a clever piece of technology that sounds strangely familiar: the vending machine. In the 1st century AD, an inventor named Hero of Alexandria created a device for temples that would dispense a set amount of holy water when you inserted a coin. The weight of the coin would tip a lever, opening a valve that let the water flow out. Once the coin slid off, the valve would close. It was a simple, brilliant mechanism, the world's first coin-operated machine, invented 2,000 years ago. Let's return to our furry friends, the mammoths. We already know they coexisted with the pyramid builders, but their story gets even crazier. On the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska, a group of woolly mammoths met their end in a truly dramatic fashion. They were trapped by a volcanic eruption and buried in ash around 3,600 years ago. This means that these mammoths were still alive during the Bronze Age, around the time King Tut was ruling Egypt. Their perfectly preserved remains tell a story of a world where Ice Age giants were still walking the earth as human civilizations were flourishing. The image of a knight in shining armor belongs to the Middle Ages, right? A time of castles, jousting, and sword fighting. But the last knight to fight in full armor didn't ride into battle against another knight. He stood in the trenches of World War I. His name was Adrian Carton de Wyaart, a British officer of Belgian descent. Though not a literal medieval knight, he was a throwback to a bygone era of warfare. He was so notoriously tough and fearless that his men saw him as a figure of legend, an anachronism on the modern battlefield. The image of a man in armor amidst the machine guns and mustard gas of World War I is a haunting testament to how brutally the world had changed. The Library of Alexandria. Its destruction is lamented as one of the greatest losses of knowledge in human history. We often picture it as a single catastrophic event, one great fire that consumed all the scrolls of the ancient world. The reality is more complex and, in a way, more tragic. The library didn't burn just once. It suffered a series of destructive events over several centuries. From fires during Julius Caesar's civil war to neglect and purging by later rulers, the library slowly faded away. It wasn't a single blaze, but a long, slow death of knowledge, 1,000 cuts over hundreds of years. Here's a fact that connects two completely different historical epochs in the life of a single person. The French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte died in 1821. The Apollo 11 moon landing happened in 1969. It seems impossible that anyone could have witnessed events tied to both, but it's true. There were people born during Napoleon's reign who lived long enough to watch Neil Armstrong take his first steps on the moon on television. Imagine being born in a world of horse-drawn carriages and empires and living to see humanity travel to another celestial body. It's the ultimate illustration of how rapidly the world can change within a single human lifetime. When we think of the Titanic, we think of its tragic end. But at the time of its launch in 1912, it was a marvel of modern technology. The ship was a floating palace of luxury that was, in many ways, more advanced than the average home on land. The Titanic had its own telephone switchboard system, allowing passengers in first-class suites to call other parts of the ship. It was fully lit by electricity and had electric elevators. For context, in 1912, a significant number of homes in both America and Britain still relied on gas lamps and didn't have a telephone. The Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a glimpse into the future. Let's talk about living history. Jonathan the tortoise, who lives on the island of St. Helena, is the oldest known living land animal on Earth. He was hatched around 1832. That means Jonathan was born before the invention of the light bulb in 1879. He was born before the telephone was patented, before the American Civil War, and during the reign of King William IV in the United Kingdom. This single, slow-moving creature has silently witnessed nearly 2 centuries of human history, from the Victorian era to the digital age. He's a living relic from another time. The Old West, a time of cowboys, outlaws, and gunfights at high noon. It feels like it belongs to the distant past, a dusty chapter of American history. But let's put it in perspective. The infamous outlaw Jesse James was killed in 1882. YouTube was launched in 2005. The time between Jesse James's death and the founding of YouTube is only 123 years. The time between his death and the American Revolution is 106 years. That means the death of one of the Wild West's most notorious figures is closer to the birth of the platform you're watching this on right now than it is to the founding of the country. What do you think was the first sound ever recorded? Most people would guess Thomas Edison's voice on his phonograph in 1877. But the real answer is 17 years earlier. In 1860, a Parisian inventor named Edouard Léon Scott de Martinville recorded a person singing the French folk song Au clair de la lune, using his invention, the phonautograph. The device could record sound waves as lines on paper, but it couldn't play them back. It wasn't until 2008 that scientists used technology to scan these lines and finally hear the ghostly voice captured over a century and a half ago. The earliest known recording of a human voice. Poor Pluto. Demoted from planet status, it often gets overlooked. But it holds a fascinating astronomical secret. Pluto was discovered in 1930. A year on Pluto, the time it takes to complete one orbit around the Sun, is about 248 Earth years. This means that since its discovery in 1930, Pluto has still not completed a single full orbit around the Sun. In fact, it won't complete its first full orbit since we found it until the year 2178. We discovered an entire world in our solar system that, from its own perspective, is still in the same year it was when we first laid eyes on it, from the cosmos back to Earth and into the deep freeze. Scientists have accomplished something straight out of science fiction. They've found plants, seeds, and even bacteria that were frozen in the Siberian permafrost during the last ice age, over 30,000 years ago. And here's the incredible part. After being carefully thawed in a lab, some of these ancient organisms have been revived. Seeds have sprouted into flowering plants, and bacteria have started multiplying again. It's a literal awakening of a long-lost ecosystem, a message in a bottle from the Ice Age. The Roman Empire was known for its incredible engineering, from aqueducts to roads. But their most impressive material might have been their concrete. Roman concrete, particularly the kind used for marine structures, is remarkably durable. Some of it has survived for over 2,000 years, even when submerged in seawater. Modern concrete erodes in decades under similar conditions. Scientists have discovered the Roman secret, a recipe involving volcanic ash that allowed the concrete to not only resist decay, but to actually strengthen over time. When tiny cracks formed, seawater would react with the material to grow new crystals, effectively healing the structure. The Romans invented self-healing concrete 2 millennia ago. Imagine being a prehistoric human, huddled around a fire in a deep cave. You decide to draw the world around you, sketching the great beasts you hunt and fear on the stone walls. Thousands of years later, archaeologists find your drawings of strange, hairy rhinos and bizarre, long-horned bison. For a long time, historians thought these were just mythical creatures, products of a primitive imagination. But then, paleontologists started digging up fossils, and they found the remains of the woolly rhinoceros and the steppe bison, animals that perfectly matched the ancient cave paintings. Those prehistoric artists weren't fantasizing. They were drawing what they saw. They were documenting a world of megafauna we never would have believed existed if not for their art. And finally, our last fact isn't a single event, but the theme that ties all of this together: time itself. History isn't a straight line. It's a swirling, chaotic, beautiful vortex where eras collide. It's a world where mammoths and pyramid builders shared the same planet, where Cleopatra was closer to the iPhone than to the pyramids she's famous for, where knights and machine guns occupied the same battlefield and samurai and telephones existed in the same year. The past is not a foreign country. It's right here, woven into the fabric of our present in ways that are far stranger and more wonderful than we can possibly imagine. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the weirdest corners of history. If these facts blew your mind, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the unbelievable. Let me know in the comments which fact you found the most shocking. Until next time, stay curious.